These people have a right to say what they think. They have a right to express their opinions. And frankly, the more you try and shut them down, the angrier they're going to get. So let's try and bring them in. Take them seriously. Don't patronise them. Listen to what they've got to say. Debate with them. Discuss with them.
You met with one of them. I think you called him Paul, was a neo-Nazi from Northern England.
He was at the radical end of that spectrum.
He was, okay.
He was really at the radical end of that spectrum.
Can you tell me a bit about what you thought you might find and then what you found when you met him and just your impressions there?
Yeah, it's a story that I suppose is really like many of those in the book, which is I'd formed an impression of this guy based on what I'd seen of him online. Online, Paul really was a virulent neo-Nazi. A sort of one-man propaganda machine who would spend, he later told me, 90% of his time pushing out this sort of white supremacist propaganda. Get rid of the immigrants, you know, we haven't got any space for them anymore, and they're all sneering, violent thugs, whereas white people, by contrast, are beautiful, graceful, intelligent. So when I looked at what he was posting online, and my God, does he post a lot, I thought, this guy is going to be a pretty terrifying individual, and I'm not going to like him very much at all. So I'm waiting, and I communicate with him for a while, and he agrees to meet me. And
so are you posing as a neo-Nazi
I'm
online?
posing as myself. I'm
okay.
myself. I mean, overall, I'm always trying to be myself because I think it's the fairest way of going about this type of research. But he agrees to meet me. So I go up north, this tiny town, I can't tell you where it is, but a small town. It could have been one of hundreds up there. Not very much going on there, pretty run down. And I'm waiting, and he says he's going to meet me at the train station. And I'm thinking, oh, Jesus, I'm like, who's this guy going to be? And you know what? This handsome, friendly-looking dude walks up to me, looks quite trendy, he's got a few tattoos, he looks pretty cool. And he's like, oh, you're right, Jamie, it's me, Paul. I can't believe you've come. It's so nice to meet you. And I'm thinking, who's this? What? Who's this guy? And you know, immediately I really liked him. For all his terrible views, which I disagreed with virulently, he on a personal level, we got on really well. I felt like we could have been mates in a different world, in a different time. We could have been mates. So on a personal level, when I stripped away the screen, when I saw what he was really like, and I could see his face, I could see how frustrated he was, how few opportunities he had where he was living. There was nothing for him to do. There was no jobs for him. He hadn't had a job since he was 16. And he got sort of warped and sucked into this online world where people listened to him, where he had an identity that meant something, that people would follow him and pay attention to his words. The offline Paul, no one cared about him, and no one was interested.
It sounds like my life, by the way. But I think
sounds like a lot of people's lives, in a sense, that you find you can recreate an identity that's a sort of better version of yourself, that's tailored to a particular community, and you live up to that because you want to keep that community that watches you happy. You're playing to the audience, and that's what he did. So offline, I really liked him. Online, he was appalling.
And you said there was an incident where he had kind of walked by some, fellow, supporters of his party, and he didn't really want to interact with them offline, even though they were of the same thinking. He wanted, because then they might know that he was just him offline.
That was the moment, I think, more than any other, that made me sort of realise what was going on with him. He's walking down to get a sandwich from a petrol station at 3:00 in the morning. One morning after a heavy session of being, guess what, on the internet.
Right.
And he goes and gets a sandwich, and as he's going down there, he sees three blokes walking past him, wearing the English Defence League hoodie and the English Defence League caps, chanting English Defence League songs. This is the movement that Paul was a member of, and he never really saw anyone in his town that was from the English Defence League. But rather than speaking to them, he just kept quiet, kept walking, got his sandwich, went back home. And the reason, he said, was because offline, who was he? They didn't know him. I bet they knew who he was online. I bet they knew who he was because he was notorious. But offline, he's just an ordinary guy, and he's quite shy. He's actually quite nervous and shy. Get him behind the screen, however, and it's a different matter altogether. So it was no surprise to me when I thought about it that he would prefer to keep those two bits of his life separate.
Right. Fascinating, fascinating.
What we call reality is in fact nothing more than a culturally sanctioned and linguistically reinforced hallucination.
This week on London Real, we have Edward Snowden's attorney, Jessalyn Raddick.
Edward Snowden made the only choice he could make, which was to go outside of the United States to blow the whistle. What we're going through now, people should be marching in the streets over what NSA is doing. There has been so much fear-mongering by the government that they've been able to create an entire surveillance state.
And former NSA executive turned whistleblower Thomas Drake.
What I was blowing the whistle on was government illegality, violations of the Constitution, massive fraud, waste, and abuse and wrongdoing. This was raw power. This is the government saying, you know what? 9/11 is our excuse. We're just going to get the data. I was facing 35 years plus in prison.
To send a chilling message.
To whom?
To other whistleblowers, to others in the government.
If you dare hold up a mirror to the government, if you dare speak truth to power or of power, we're going to hammer you and hammer you good.
On Sunday, London Real presents Jessalyn Raddick and Thomas Drake, NSA whistleblower.
We just don't do this to Americans. That's why we had an American Revolution.